This is Brother Leonard, the Truth Seeker, and I'm coming to you with a few minutes of truth. I've been sitting on this story for about a week to a week and a half because I've been wanting to get the information, but because it's starting to leak out now, I'm going to give you basically the information that I was able to ascertain as it relates to the reason why you clicked. You know, Mr. James Hall. Now, as for many of you know, earlier this past spring in 2017, James Hall filed a lawsuit against Bishop Jeffrey Thomas and begins to tell a story about how Bishop Thomas was very infatuated with James Hall, but yet James Hall was not the man that Mr. Thomas thought he was. And so Mr. Thomas started putting out some information about who he think he was and everything like that, and so Mr. Hall decided to sue him. Well, this past fall, that lawsuit got dismissed, and in its place, Mr. Thomas decided to countersue. So this is where it gets interesting, is the information and details that are within the countersuit from Mr. Thomas about Mr. Hall, and not only Mr. Hall, but Kevin Bond, Edison Bond, and the Citadel of Praise and Worship Church in, I believe it is Brooklyn, New York. Oh boy. I was reading this past week, and I got this information about Mr. Hall last, I believe it was Tuesday or so. And I wanted to come with it, but I didn't get a chance to actually read through the entire court docket in order to put together, piece it up before I went on live on last Thursday. So I was just going to hold off onto it until the until after the holiday when I came back. But since it's coming out, I might as well get my piece in too. So here's what's going on. Mr. Thomas, and I know a lot of people want to stick with the gay stuff when it comes down to these issues, and yes, there's a lot of gay stuff in this report. And not only is a lot of gay stuff, it's a lot of trifling stuff that's going on too, as it relates to Mr. Hall, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Bond, and some other folk that's going on. A lot of nicknames, a lot of fights, a lot of just messy. And what I should do, but I'm not going to, you can find this dossier, if you look hard enough, you can find it and you can read it for yourself. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to go over. Is that, first of all, it does go into detail about how Mr. Hall and Mr. Bond would use church money to basically finance their fornication rendezvous with Mr. Thomas, and how they used church money to set up Mr. Thomas into when he came to New York, and they also used church money to basically try to hush Mr. Thomas. So that's a part of the deal, which is more which pertains more to me as it relates to the money. But I know for most of y'all want to deal with the sexual stuff, okay? And there's a lot of it throughout this court docket, but we have to maintain and main focus that while we get caught up in the mess, that we don't find ourselves you know, in the mess. So, like for instance, or as it relates to this case, Mr. Thomas has alleged that Mr. Hall gave him syphilis. And it goes into detail about how Mr. Hall knew about the STD, how he did not disclose to Mr. Thomas about having the STD. And Mr. Thomas talks about how they had unprotected sex on many times, and then he contracted said STD. Now, I didn't know this, but in the state of New York, when you intentionally give someone an STD, they call that battery. Wow. I guess that would be battery of some sort. Smacking you up in the head with an STD or something. But it also goes on to say how Mr. Hall pursued relationship with Jeffrey Thomas, and once Mr. Thomas took, left, his life in North Carolina, moved to New York, then, just like how relationships do, it goes south. And with the relationship going south, now he's, just doing whatever he has to do to try to make it in his new place without much to go back home to in North Carolina. Now, I do have a lot of issues as it relates to this case, but I wanted to get these things out right now, and I will further give you information about Mr. Bond, Mr. Edison, which is Mr. Edison Bond, which is Kevin Bond's brother. They're the pastors of the Citadel of Praise and Worship Church in New York, along with James Hall. There's a lot of this stuff that we still need to unpack, and we're going to do that. But I wanted to get this quick update out here just to let you know that we here in the Revolution have been paying attention. We have been doing this stuff. I've just been trying to get all the ducks in line and all the ducks in order to present something that is more, not just because everyone right now is going to focus in on James Hall having syphilis. Okay? Now, that's according to the docket. He's going to deny it. We're going to find that denial. So we're going to wait, get his side of the story about the denial of the syphilis. I mean, even Thomas goes into detail about the syphilis. He talks about how he had the blotchy red skin, saying that he had an allergic rash, and how described James Hall as having blurry vision. And, that's kind of bad. If that's true, that's kind of bad. That means that man had the disease for a while, and he left it untreated, and it's basically anesthetizing in his body. And that's just not good at all. So if that's somewhat true, James, I know that you want to, look, if that's somewhat true, please go get yourself taken care of, bruh. For real, for real. It's past all, listen, right now, it's past all this thing of you trying to hide your gayness. All right? Listen, I was sitting up here looking at some album covers last night of yours, and I'm like, nah, fam, we already know you ain't got nothing to hide. You out, you open and out. So just go ahead, be free in what that is, but get yourself taken care of, brother. Get yourself taken care of so that you can be able to deal with this mess and not have to deal with the other stuff too, because that just ain't right. Trying to hide behind this stuff. So please, like I said, next week, next Wednesday, I'm gonna definitely deal with this situation here with James Hall. I'm gonna definitely deal with some other situations going on in the Revolution as it relates to these churches. I'm waiting on some of these preachers to start releasing their New Year's videos. So we're gonna be going live and direct this coming Wednesday. This coming Wednesday on the Revolution live stream. You know, hit that subscribe button, follow along, please subscribe, please share. And once again, brothers and sisters, revolution.